Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Prime-Gooley. I'm the Training and Instruction Manager for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. And I have the honor of introducing our next two speakers for our part two career exploration series, career competency series on communication. I'll be handing it over to Laura Faulcon and Karen Layou in just a minute, but a few housekeeping items just to tackle and we'll get out of the way. One, if you have any question at all throughout today's presentation, I think our speakers are pretty informal. Feel free to unmute yourself, ask away, or feel free to use the chat. I will be monitoring that as well if you prefer that mode of questioning. Secondly, we're also recording this talk that we're going to be providing on our CETL website for those faculty who were not able to attend today. So keep that in mind. Other than that, I'm going to hand it over to Karen and Laura. So I'll do.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to those of you who are joining us today via Zoom. We look forward to your participation, like Kevin said. We hope that this is informal. Please feel free to ask any questions. Definitely interrupt us. My name is Laura, as Kevin said, and my co-facilitator is Karen. And we're just going to kick this right off. And so this is part two of our series of 8 professional NACE competencies. And you might be asking, what is NACE? NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And I do walk around, so if you can't see me or can't hear me, just let me know. I was given that feedback before. And is this projected so they can see?
Yeah, you can see it. Oh,
okay, thank you. Thank you. So just a quick summary of NACE. This is the governing body that we develop all of our programs for from the Career Services Office. In general, they forecast hiring and job trends, projections in the market. They track starting salaries. They also look at recruiting and hiring practices. We are looking at student attitudes and outcomes, also best practices and benchmarks. So in total, there are 8 competencies. This is the second of a series of 8. Earlier in the month, we looked at career exploration, and today we are diving into communication, which is what our employers say is the single most important competency. So regardless of what you all are teaching in your content areas, communication is the absolute most important. So that's what, here are the 8. We're doing 4 this fall and then 4 in the spring. And take a look at this quote here. Take a minute to mull over that. Any thoughts?
I agree. It's one of those things that, again, this ability to share ideas effectively in a timely manner
Yes,
are so key to what we need to be doing.
absolutely. And so I might even guess that this number could be higher. For those of you that don't know, I do have an employer advisory group. We do meet monthly. And we have over 100 employers in our Richmond area that we have listed as our partners, but just roughly about 28 to 30 that are on our advisory group. And they're an incredible group that represent a diverse spectrum of partners. We've got health professions, we have humanities, we have skilled trades, we've got financial partners. But literally, this is what they're telling us is the most important thing. And we'll see some direct quotes from there in just a minute. So like Karen said, she agrees. How do you all feel about this quote? Do you agree too?
I agree completely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these. Which of the following statements are accurate? Either from your perspective as a professor, or maybe interactions that you've had with people in the workplace, maybe interactions on campus.
So I'll jump in with number 1 here, Laura. Yeah, I'm guilty of that myself, right? You know, the thing is, I would bet that we all have a number of unopened emails in our inboxes as we speak. And so if that's us, I can also think about our students too. We all know, we feel like students don't read our emails, right? So I definitely think that's likely a very accurate statement, and it might even be higher.
Mhm. Yes, thank you for sharing that. How about anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go for number 2.
Okay.
Number 2 is huge, and I think you nailed it with those 2 questions. What is this what is this about? And what does this have to do with me, right? And so if the answer to, that does it have an impact on me, it doesn't affect me, yep, going on to the next email for something that I absolutely have to address and that it impacts me or what I do. And those are the emails that you go to first. And these other emails go to the bottom of the list, right? So you may go back and read them, but they're not of high importance.
Yes.
When those 2 questions don't answer, yes, I need to take care of this, or I need to address this, or I need to attend, you skip over it.
Exactly. Exactly. Anybody else? And thank you for those just joining us here. Good to see you.
I put it in the chat, but number 5, I know if I leave a voice message for one of my own children, they will not listen to it. I need to text them.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, I have just recently, of course, we're now getting into this generation of students not responding to emails. Like no one's checking emails anymore. And I was in another session that this topic came up. And so now what I've started to do when it's something that I need the students to address, I now use Navigate, and I use the text feature within Navigate to communicate with the students. And I just give them a little snippet. And even if it's, I need you to check your email because I have details about X, Y, and Z. That to me, they're responding now, right? So now I'm getting less students saying, what are you talking about? Because it's going directly to their phones. And so they're looking at it. And then I followed up with them, and I'll say, like, if I see some of the students in the hallway, I'll say, did you get my text message? Oh, yeah, I got it. And I read that email, and that's what I'm looking for, right? That's what I'm looking for so that we can keep that communication open. And so you don't get the students that are saying that, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I haven't read that yet. And so anyway, I love the feature of Navigate with the text message.
Awesome. And Kevin, I saw what you put in the chat too. So email is the new snail mail. Well, thank you for those comments on that. I don't know what you all think, but all of these statements really are accurate in a different perspective, depending on who you are, the perspective that you're coming from, what lens you're looking through. And so the reason why I wanted to share these with you is that all of our students too are coming from different perspectives. If you could put yourself in the employer's shoes for just a minute, we are preparing our students to go out into the workforce at some point. But imagine if you had to talk to your future student as an employer and text them to say, check your email. Imagine. Do we want that future student employer having to do that? That isn't what they want, So what we're trying to do is instill these things now in preparation for going into the workforce. But it's good that you recognize that. And that's okay, that we know that like Kathy said, the demographics, I have to do the same thing, unfortunately, with my grown children. What's even worse is we'll be in the house, we'll be texting each other in the house. I'm embarrassed to say, but I'm just putting it out there. That's how it is. Sometimes we'll FaceTime in the house. I mean, are we that lazy? Yes. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. As far as employers, as far as colleagues, we all work for the same institution. How many of us check our email on a regular basis? How many of us truly read every single email? How many of us respond within 24 hours? Is that a norm? Is that an expectation for us to respond within 24 hours? You don't have to respond, just putting it out there.
But this raises an interesting question, I think, in terms of who is setting these norms,
Yes.
right? And then it's like we have these norms that might be changing to some extent.
Yes.
And so who decides what changes and when?
Exactly. Good question. So also in preparation for students going out into the workforce, every single company has different norms. They have different expectations. So what I'm doing and having conversations with our students in preparation for the workforce is for them to research the company's goals, their values, and those norms. Oftentimes they're published on their mission and vision. They're, if they do have a chance to get hired and being offered the job, that's part of their onboarding process. And if not, I encourage students to ask those questions when they're in the interview process. You know, talk to me about your onboarding process. Talk to me about your communication. And so employers like to see that, you know, that applicants are looking to ask those questions.
Laura, I'll just make one more comment. You know, the students always tell me the statement that the younger students make is that we need to get with the program, right? Like, this is, we're the next generation. And so if the company is not doing X, Y, and Z, this is what my generation wants, they need to get with the program. So guess what? I'm going to skip over that employer because they're not current. They're not meeting the needs of those who they're going to hire, or at least the larger pool of those who they're going to hire. And, you know, of course, my younger students are saying, no offense, I mean, because I'm older, but it's like, listen, you got to get with the program. So, you know, you better learn how to do these things, because we are the future, and we are who are those who are being hired into the workforce. So
yeah. And what's interesting is that the norms change, but a lot of the etiquette around email never developed. And kind of in how you frame an email, you know, we still, well, aging myself, but you know, we kind of still write them like we're writing letters rather than just putting that, you know, bottom line up front and then making an email something that's easy for the person receiving it to be able to answer those questions. What is this about, and does it affect me, or how does it affect me?
Very good points for both of you. And I think Karen is going to unpack that a little bit. So just kind of wanted to show this. So how do these show up in your classes? And I'm sorry, Melissa, I see. Oh, but you do this with your students. Awesome. Email etiquette. That's perfect. So you're already showing that in your classes. That's awesome. So how do these show up in your classes? So failure to complete an assignment, inability to work with a classmate on a group project. That's a perfect example of communication. So how about lack of student participation? So it wanes throughout the semester, and then unfortunately they might drop out. That's worst case scenario. But how about despite multiple attempts to engage, the student just doesn't respond on their BCCS email? Any others too?
I would say that as a faculty member, like the classic ghosting student, you know, it's like, it's not even just they're not responding to their emails, but they're not logging into the class. You can see that they're not coming into Canvas. And that's a place of, where's the communication?
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Any others?
This is Melissa. I typically will follow up with students, you know, like, hey, I missed you in lecture today. You know, if they don't show up or whatever, if they ghost that first week. And then, you know, in the legal field, we're real big on CYA, cover your booty. And so I'll put in writing kind of a strong, a firm, but a positive message to the students of like, hey, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, but I know that if you've chosen this program, it's because you're smart and capable, because nobody wakes up and decides to study law. So when the time is right for you, there's a spot for you in the classroom, but I can't want this more than you do. And a lot of times I'll have students kind of come to me after the fact and be like, you know, that was a tough email for me to hear, but I needed to hear that. And so it was that delicate balance of like strong but kind, right? Firm but kind. And like, hey, I see the potential in you. I know you're capable. You are smart. You are here. You are ready. But I can't want this more than you do. Like, you've got to show up. And sometimes, I mean, I can use that accountability for myself, right? In my everyday life. And so sometimes giving that accountability to students and then just reminding myself, and for all of us educators, we can't want it more than they do, right? We can't be running down the street waving the paper. Don't forget to turn it in. They have to come to the table, even though that might be what we want to do. But that's a quick route to burnout for sure.
Yeah, Laura, I will tell you, I've had to take a totally different approach. I can send all the emails I want. Oh, I missed you in class today, or whatever the case may be. But I will tell you, the one way that I get their attention to contact me so that we can have a conversation about what they're not doing, what they're doing well, is to put a 0 in Canvas. Okay. As soon as I put a 0 in Canvas, I mean, the clouds, it's like they contact me and they want to meet me right away. It's an emergency now, because they see how that 0 has impacted their grade. And I hate to do that, but it's like, you have to deal with people the way in which you're going to get a response from them. And obviously that's the only way that I'm going to get a response. And I just had this happen the other day with the group project for students. And you put the 0 in, everybody's knocking at my door. Everybody, oh, can I see you right now? Can we talk about this? Sure, we sure can talk about this. And guess what? We talk about it, we get back on track, and then we're good, but anyway, that's the way in which I have to deal with it because they don't respond.
Well, I like how you both share different ways of getting students' attention, whether it's a positive affirmation or whether it's not necessarily negative or a consequence, but they're both ways of using communication to get students' attention.
I
Now,
think it has a lot to do with I see you. It's pretty easy to ghost if nobody knows you're there.
Exactly.
And I know you guys, I know you see your students and they know you. And that's however you're reaching out, that's the important piece of it.
That's great. Now, what I would ask you to do, or just think about it, next time a student is withdrawing for whatever reason, or they're not showing the attention, if you could name it and say, let's use this communication tool, or I'm seeing that you're not communicating with me. I'm reaching out to you because of X, Y, and Z. And then imagine how that will be in the workplace. Imagine if like Melissa, you said, you're using this great tool, but imagine if they had a boss that would do the same thing. If the employee stopped going to work and the boss said, I see that something's going on with you. Do you need support? Is there something I could do to help you in X, Y, and Z? And Nakia, if you were like, I'm just going to start docking your pay every day that you don't come, imagine the types of responses we would get from people in those scenarios.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's that, you don't want it to be in a threatening manner, but you're just giving them the end result of their behavior, right? Exactly. That if you don't reach out to me because I've contacted you, this is going to be the end result. And so anyway, it's that reaction that you get. And typically we can get back on track. It's never anything negative. I'm always willing to work something out with the student. So I will be honest with you, does the 0 stick? No. But it is a means of just, gaining their attention so that we can talk about it.
Exactly. It's communication. It's communication. So this is what communication is according to NACE. So we've kind of defined it in different ways, but it's just clearly and effectively communicating those ideas, just in general. And this is what employers want. They want to see it in an interview, in the workplace. We could define it in multiple different ways too. So in general, clearly articulating ideas and values, how they'll contribute to the team, that's during an interview, working phone numbers, working emails, people who will respond in a timely manner. Most likely, that working phone number, they will not text you. So Nakia, to your point of they need to get with the program, they need to know who I am. Employers most likely will not text you and say you got the job. That's a little weird. That probably won't happen. But in the workplace, they definitely want employees who will self-advocate. And so that's something that we want to see also for our students here. If they're struggling, if they aren't doing well in the class, we want students who will say, hey, can I talk to you after class? Can I go get some tutoring? Can I get extra help in this way? Those are skills that all of our employers will want to see throughout their entire career. So the employer's preferred mode of communication, whether it's email, phone, whether it's a mentor on the work site, that's what the employers want to see also. So definitely working collaboratively, communicating with employees of different backgrounds. And that starts here at school. When we look at the diversity on our campus, that is what we expect to see in the workplace. And employers want to see those employees who are able to communicate with people of different abilities, different ethnic backgrounds, different ages. And that should convey starting with an interview. Does that make sense? Okay. Also with the verbal, nonverbal, and written communication. So I'll just give an example of, nonverbal, this, or if I'm on the job and I'm just like, what are you talking about? What? Nonverbal. So many of our employers are saying, regardless of age, but this is the bane of employers' existence, is whatever the job is, people are attached to these. Can y'all see that I'm holding this?
The camera's over there.
Oh, sorry. Oh, hey. And all these screens in here. I don't know how y'all do it. Oh my gosh. I'm like a dinosaur in here. And so people are glued to their screens all day long. And perhaps they can accomplish their task, like their job, but the lack of interpersonal connection, the lack of communication, either if it's a client, if it's a customer, if it's on the phone that they need to do, they are glued to the phone, and that nonverbal communication is something that is clearly lacking. And so that is, honestly, it's preventing people from moving up in their company. It's preventing people's just work performance from being improved. So that is just, it's coming directly from our employers. So if you all could just stress that too, as you're preparing your students. Also, they are stressing the importance of self-advocacy and being coachable. In other words, like saying, well, I already know everything. I don't need any help. You can't help me. This is, again, to keep coming back to Nakia's point, this is all I got. This is all I'm going to do. Employers want someone who is willing to learn regardless of what the job is, and that they will ask for help when they need it. Any questions from that? Does it kind of make sense? So in other words, when they finish Reynolds, they might have a little bit more to learn. One or two things.
Just a few.
Just a few. I mean, I'm still learning every day. But again, I'm a different demographic. And when they transfer, or if they're transferring to a 4-year, they might have a little bit to learn. And so these are just some immediate tools that you can put right into your classes. You see the communication is right there. Can you all think of other ways that you can incorporate this right into your classes?
Well, I'm going to be sharing some methods here coming up, so we can talk more as we go through some of those.
Okay, so I see some reading. I'll honor your time here and get to Karen. Okay, so I'm going to pass the baton, and here you go.
Thank goodness it's not a real race.
I would drop it, for sure. I would totally drop it.
So I just wanted to show some examples of communication that I use in my geology classes, but also in SCV as well. And so again, as we go through these, I'd love to kind of get some feedback from all of you who are on Zoom, just to think about how you incorporate some of this into your courses. So when I sat down with Laura and we started to talk about these competencies, one of the things that we want to think about is, as faculty, how are we already doing this and building this work into our courses? And then where can we, as Laura was mentioning, actually name it for students so that they recognize that they are building these soft skills as they move through their curriculum here at Reynolds. So thinking about my classes, one of the first things I do is in the syllabus, I actually have a note, and I basically say, this is my preferred communication. So Laura had mentioned that Different employers will have different methods of their workplace culture, whether it's phones, texting, email. And so I think it's important to note for students that that's going to be the best way to get in touch. Now, this little section of text here, this is actually straight from my syllabus, and I'm highlighting what a proper email includes. Now, for SDV, we kind of go into this a little bit further, and I encourage them a little bit more in a structured way to when they're sending an email for the advising assignment to their advisor to ensure it includes all these parts. But the idea is that we want to model for them how to have proper information. I know all of you have gotten the from the desk of random student with just their student ID kind of the beginning of their email, and you're just like, who is this person? I don't know who they are. So the key here is that you want them to define themselves by their course, but then also have a greeting instead of just the hey you or jumping right into the email. It's nice to actually have some sort of greeting. And even though that's old school and like a letter, it's still that sense of recognizing that you're speaking to another person. This is the key thing, the concise question or statement, and then importantly, the signature. And then I also have this little bit because I don't want to do any of the translations because, again, I'm old and I don't know them all. So that's one aspect, is just in terms of notes that are in the syllabus about how to communicate. There are also notes in my syllabi about how to self-advocate. And so here we all probably have information about how to handle absences or grading inquiries in your class. And the idea is that I give students very defined timelines for that. And then I also, have links to the tutoring center and Math Central and other resources that we have on campus. But I think the key thing is that for all of these, I add a note about that timeliness, because the point is that we don't want students to wait until it's too late to ask for help, too late to make up exams, too late to really get at those grades. One of my biggest pet peeves as an instructor is when they come back, on the final day of class and say, on lab 1, why did I miss this? It's like, that does not help your learning in any way, shape, or form. And so we kind of talk about that when we do a little bit of the introduction to the class about why it's important to get in touch with me in a timely manner. So not only are you not just checking the grade, but you're actually thinking about the content that you don't understand and how that factors in. As I continued to think about this, I was thinking about question prompts. And so one of the things that I've worked with some of the English faculty before to revise some of the prompts, for example, my discussion boards, it's been helpful because one of the things that I recognize students struggle with is doing careful readings and making sure that they are actually answering questions being asked on assignments. And so I've done more to not only improve the language of the questions that I ask, but also I talk about that, about slow, careful reading. I teach some of them sometimes, especially if they come in, if they're a student who's struggling, to underline key words, highlight action verbs. So again, it's teaching them a little bit about how to do the careful reading, because the careful reading is part of those communication skills we talk about. Some additional examples, as we talked about a little bit before, Laura was mentioning teamwork. And so in lab, that's a natural group setting where students are interacting. And so one of the things that I think I could do a better job at is instructing students to be better about listening to all perspectives. I do have several assignments in class where perhaps they might have different roles that they're taking on as they work through the lab materials, and so they all kind of have a job. But there are times where I'm sure those of you who have seen group work notice that you might have one dominant student or some that are a little bit more quiet. And so I think encouraging students to recognize some of those nonverbal cues is also a beneficial thing to explain to them when you talk about the group dynamics. And then we also have two other types of examples of assessments that I do in class: oral presentations, where students can practice those verbal skills. And so it's that public speaking aspect. But the other part of it, and I do actually provide them feedback and points for these different things, is thinking about their pace and tone, how they take questions, but also this idea of, is what they're saying matching what they're showing on the screen? Because I think that's another piece that is often missed by students. a lot of times they'll have great information on their slides, but they don't talk you through it. You know, they might have a graph, but they just say, see, it goes up, and then on to the next slide. And it's like, no, tell us about those variables. Tell us about your information and how it changed, right? And then finally, thinking about discussion boards and thinking about written skills. This is where a place where I tend to emphasize more the importance of grammar and spelling as we go, just because, again, it's that idea of the more proper you are in your use of language, the easier it is to typically understand your point. But broadly speaking, I don't do too much with spelling in my classes just because we are dealing with lots of new jargon, lots of geology terminology. But I do expect them to, spell their own name correctly in other posts. So these are just some examples of things that I do in my STEM classes. And so I'd love to hear from our folks in Zoom. What are some of the ways that you recognize that you build communication skills into your courses?
Karen, I want to say that I love that you point out that it's self-advocacy, because not all students know what that is. What does that mean? And why it's important. And because I worry about, I have students who know that everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
And then I have students who don't know that. And those are the students I really worry about. So I try to teach them that you need, you can stand up for yourself. You can ask for more time. You can ask for help. And I like that you call it self-advocacy. I've never thought of doing that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think that's something, again, that I've picked up in recent years, but it's something that I feel like, again, the generation of students that we're teaching, there's, I think, this sort of tendency to not speak up for themselves. And so this is one of the things that I want to say, like, no, you have that power. Go ahead and step into it. Other thoughts?
I always look about it. Those are such great suggestions first, Karen, are great things for sharing. And I'm glad to know you're thinking about that in STEM, which was not my forte. So it's really encouraging to know that that's happening in other places outside like the humanities or, trades or whatever. I always look at it through the lens because I have 3 kids, all of whom are neurodivergent with learning differences. My son specifically dyslexic. So I understand better now more than ever the mental energy that he has to use to just simply read it, which then causes a lapse in comprehension. And then if I can simply say it to him, like if it's a word problem for math, he'll spend 90% of his brain power trying to read the word problem and then has very little effort left to actually answer the word problem, and might even have to spend the 10 minutes of time allotted to answer the question reading the question twice. Whereas if I asked him the question aloud, he probably knows the answer right off the top of his head or could get busy spending the time to work on it. So I've tried to be even more intentional in my assignments, in my lecture time, in every form of communication with students, even on multiple choice quizzes where I will just read aloud the question because it's an inclusive way of teaching for students who can read easily and fluently. They might actually prefer to hear it, and you might hear it in a different way and understand inflection and things like that. So trying to provide multiple ways, multiple modalities for information communication from the instructor's perspective for students who have learning differences. Now, you can't always do that. I can't read a Supreme Court case aloud and have them listen to it, but there could be little attributes where I do, like I'll find the main point that I'm hoping, like maybe it's the cause of action within the case. And I will actually read that aloud, record myself so they at least hear that part together too. So that's one thing that I've tried to think about and would always encourage for other faculty as well, because students in self-efficacy may not know that about themselves or yet understand that perhaps their lack of reading comprehension actually stems from a learning difference in the processing auditory. They may not even know that about themselves, but it could be an answer to why it is so difficult for them.
And I'm thinking about translating that then back to workforce, right? So if during their time here at Reynolds, they are learning some of their strategies. I don't want to say coping, but I'm thinking like sort of coping mechanisms or just strategies for success.
Yeah.
They realize that, you know, having things discussed is better than reading, then they know moving forward in a workplace environment how to be successful. And that's key.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear from Nikia, like, what are some of the ways that you might talk about professionalism? Because I know that for respiratory therapy, because they're working with patient clients, what are some of the ways that you might build in some of that aspect of, you know, working with the public and
Yeah, so we have a capstone course actually that I teach in the spring semester, which is the last semester of the program. And so in that capstone course, we hit the ground running with the topic of professionalism. We have topics in reference to teamwork, you know, collaboration, resume writing, all of that good stuff is covered when the course starts. And we spend probably about a month and a half or so covering that information. And we do role playing within the class as well to prepare them for interviewing. And so all of that is covered in the actual capstone course. And so I've always done all the things myself. In the past, I've had representatives from VCU come over from their HR department or from their career services, and they've come over to participate and giving information out about resume writing. I've even had those from my career center in the past, like Rhonda Bond and oh my gosh, I forgot the other young lady's name. It's yeah.
Robert Beal?
Robin Beal, yes, Robin Beal. And they've participated as well. And so we have these, all of my students participate in a mock interview. So each one of them have to come here to the college dressed and prepared. We talk about how early do you need to show up for an interview, that type of thing. So Robin has participated in this in the past. And so I'll put them in offices and I'll send them out an email that you're going to go to this particular room for your interview. And then I have a set of interview questions that they have to answer. And then Robin or whoever I have working with me on this will then provide the students with feedback at the end of the interview. Now, it's not an hour interview. It's just like a 10-minute snapshot. And it's the questions are like popular questions that probably most employers would ask during an interview time. And so I've been doing that now probably for about 8 years.
That's awesome.
Great. Well, make sure you let me know. Count me in.
Oh, Laura, I already have you. It's already written down. I'm trying to get my syllabus and all together because I'm revamping because we're moving from a 12-week course to a 15-week course. And so it is my plan to reach out to you for you to step in and to help out with some of this.
Count me in.
So Maya, Kathy, Nicole, any comments on how you use communication in your class? And I love how we're talking about not only kind of engaging with content, but then also as a student here at Reynolds, there's like levels of communication we're discussing. All right, anyone else want to share any final comments there? We can, I think, start to get to our wrap-up slides. So this was just, we kind of were just doing this, but the idea is that as you prepare your classes for future semesters, think about where you are emphasizing these aspects of communication in your classroom. And again, like I say, call it out, name it, encourage students to recognize that they are building these skills as they move through your course content. So to finish out, we have some sample behaviors according to NACE that are, again, beneficial for encouraging student growth in the area of the communication competency. And so as we were talking about, not only is it the verbal and written, but some of those nonverbal skills, body language skills that they can start to understand. Employing active listening, that's a fantastic thing that you can try to encourage in class. I think a great way to do that on some level is providing a notes skeleton so they kind of see where they might need to be filling in some information as you go. Certainly persuasion and influence can come in some of the written work that students do. Communicating in clear and organized ways. framing communication with a diversity of learning styles like Melissa was talking about. Also, cultural differences play a key role. One of the things that I think is incredibly important is to recognize that not all people work the same schedules, for example. I have a colleague who actually has in his signature line, I may respond to this email at 3 a.m., but I don't expect you to reply at 3 a.m. And I love that because, again, people just sort of work differently in their own spaces. And then, again, the question is thinking about asking appropriate questions when you need that assistance, and then inform others when you need that guidance as well. So the key here is that all of these behaviors can fundamentally be expressed by or built upon within the classroom, but they are going to have that broader workforce implication as well. Laura, any final comments here?
The only final comment I would have on this is just reflect on how this has changed, maybe from 10 years ago, from 20 years ago. Especially as we've evolved as educators, as professionals, maybe think about how these might change in the future. Communication will continue to be the most important thing employers will be looking for, but just as workforce demands will change, communication might change with that also.
All right.
Okay.
So at this point, we would like to welcome you to provide a little bit of feedback for us. Communicate, please. So if you have your phone in front of you and you want to do it and you're logged into your VCCS accounts on your phone, you can use the QR code that's present on the slide. And Kevin is also going to drop in the chat window the link to the evaluation form as well. And again, it's short and sweet. We just want a couple of comments from you just so that we can continue to build flows, the faculty learning opportunities through CETL that are going to be beneficial to you and your colleagues. So thank you all for joining us for a little bit of communication here at lunch. And I hope to see you at a future one of our sessions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.